Welcome back to Old School Sports and the Out of the Park Baseball 26 series that we have been playing with the Colorado Rockies. And for the first time in franchise history, the Colorado Rockies are your World Series champions here in 2031. Been a pretty good run with the Rockies. We inherited them during this miserable 2025 season for the Rockies in real life. Made the playoffs 6 years in a row now. The first 3 years, we kind of felt like we were doing it with smoke and mirrors, and we were consistently getting bounced very early in the postseason. A couple of years ago in 2029, we finally won our first playoff series, won a wild card series, and went to the divisional series. Last year, we made it all the way to Game 7 of the World Series, and we were win now team in this 2031 season, and for the second straight year, we had the best record in baseball, and we got the job done properly in the postseason finally, winning the World Series here in 2031 over the Tampa Bay Rays. So it's been a good run. As I mentioned, 6 straight playoff appearances, the first 3 divisional titles in Rockies history, and the first World Series title in Rockies history. Unfortunately, despite that strong track record, the fans in Colorado are still pretty apathetic about our Rockies squad with pathetic fan loyalty, even though fan interest did get a nice bump after the title, and hopefully we'll be well positioned to make some good money next year. We got a big $16 million bump in our potential budget, and we definitely have the opportunity to move on from several contracts over the next few weeks to hopefully open up even a little more money for the offseason, where conceivably we could make a big move or two in the free agent market. But realistically, we're probably going to have some holes on the pitching staff and in the infield that we're going to need to fill this offseason. So some interesting decisions ahead. In this episode, we are going to focus on doing our annual roster review. And fortunately, we'll be doing it from a position of strength after winning it all. Our 98-64 record on the year, right in line with Pythagorean expectations. Had an outstanding offense, first in the National League in runs scored, and we ranked in the top 6 in every offensive category, and we're really first or second in most of the primary offensive categories. Also a very good pitching staff, tied for 4th in runs allowed. And you can see first in bullpen ERA, second in WAR, second in hits allowed, second in opponent batting average, second in home runs allowed, which is particularly impressive, playing half our games in Colorado. And a very good defensive team as well, second in defensive efficiency, first in zone rating. So pretty much the Rockies were firing on most, if not possibly all, cylinders this year. And ended with a title, and now the goal is to try to keep as much of this team together as we possibly can, and hopefully win another one in the not too distant future. And we will take a look at our pitching staff first. This is an area where I think we could have some pretty significant turnover this upcoming offseason. Fortunately, it won't be at the top of the rotation. Leo Martinez, scouting discovery from back in 2027, someone we have signed for the long term. He was 9-4 with a 2.58 ERA in 18 starts for us this year, and he was a huge contributor to our playoff success, a 3-1 record with a 2.53 ERA in 5 starts, 1.6 WAR across those 5 starts. So Martinez, as a 21-year-old, is now a World Series champion, and hopefully he will be a guy to head up our rotation for the next decade and a half or so. Isaiah Shader, another guy who's come up through our organization, a 6th-round pick in 2025, who's worked out very well. 13-8 record with a 4.71 ERA and a 2.8 WAR for us. He is finally headed to arbitration, but set to make only about $2.5 million next year, so he will certainly be back. And Andrew Painter, our number 3 starter this year, 12-9 record with a 3.49 ERA in his 2nd season in Colorado, 2.5 WAR on the season. And after a rough postseason a year ago, he was very good this year. Only a 1-1 record, but a 1.90 ERA over 23 2/3 innings. Interestingly, his WARs for the postseason 0.8 in both years, despite the fact that his ERA was close to 6 a year ago, and it was under 2 this past season. Painter signed for the next several years, and he will be back in the rotation with us next year. But a lot of the other guys that we're going to be talking about, we've got some decisions to make. Braden Nett, 6-9 record this year, a season after leading the National League with 18 wins, only a 0.6 WAR. He's going to be turning 30 next season. Does have that low work ethic and pretty poor control as far as his pitches. And he is set to be making around $8.5 million in arbitration. I tend to think we'll probably bring him back at that number with some other departures that we likely have coming with the pitching staff, and expectation that we're probably not going to be able to get a true difference-making starter on the free agent market. In the meantime, we're going to be exploring the trade market for some guys that we're unlikely to bring back, and perhaps there will be an opportunity for us to package a few guys up for a nice starting pitcher, which could make Net a little less important for us to think about bringing back. But right now, haven't made any firm commitments. Still going to think about things and hopefully get some more feedback from the worldwide scouting department before we decide what to do. But if I had to guess, I think Net is probably back with us next year. A guy who definitely will be back is our left-handed closer, Wellington Herrera. 38 saves this year, a 2.20 ERA, was not quite as sharp as a year ago when he had a WAR of over 2 and a league best 51 saves, but still a very productive pitcher for us out of the bullpen. A lot of decisions, though, with a lot of these other players that we're going to be talking about. Gregory Santos, the right-hander who's been with us since the middle of 2026, 3.33 ERA, just about a win above replacement. He generally has been a very good reliever for us over the past several years, heading into the final team option of his contract at $5 million. He's going to be turning 33 next season, and although he was very good with us this year, realistically his ERA was almost double what it was a year ago. And as I mentioned, a lower WAR than he had last season. Luke Little is another interesting decision, a guy who we ended up bringing back when he was headed into free agency last year. Little's another important reliever on our team whose ERA almost doubled from a year ago to 3.63. Also contributed a lower WAR than a year ago. His number of holds cut in half from that league-leading number of 33 last season. And we've got a team option for $6 million for him next year. Could definitely make sense to move on from Santos and or Little. Justin Gibson will be back, though. The 4th-round pick in 2028 had another nice season for us. Led the National League with 26 holds and put up a 3.59 ERA with 119 strikeouts over 92 2/3 innings pitched. Primarily as a setup man, but also did serve as our stopper from time to time. So Herrera back as closer, Gibson back as a setup man, Martinez, Shader, and Painter back as our 1, 2, 3 starters. I think everyone else is a a question mark. It's just how big the question marks are. Bobby Miller worked out of the bullpen this entire season, where he was pretty effective. ERA of under 3 over 61 and 2/3 innings. He was above a replacement level pitcher for us. Team option for Miller at $3.5 million a season. Don't know that he's really going to have much trade value, but we could still get out of that contract given the decrease in stamina he's experienced over the past few years. Definitely not really a realistic option as a starter anymore, but he certainly was a much more useful arm out of the pen this season than he was a year ago when he had an awful year for us. Kumar Rocker was a rental for us, spent most of the year as a fifth starter, 10-5 record with a 4.25 ERA and a WAR of close to 2. But he's going to be turning 32 years old shortly, and he's looking for $12.2 million. That's the type of price tag on a guy like Rocker that makes me think retaining Mr. Net makes sense. Drew Summers has been a good left-hander for us for several years at this point. 2.74 ERA over 42 and 2/3 innings. He is a guy who is headed to free agency, though. Not looking for crazy money, about $2 million a year for the next 3 seasons. But he's also into his 30s now. His stuff is certainly not exceptional at this point. Not expensive, but also not really going to be a true difference maker for us, most likely. Joe Rock, going to be an interesting decision for us. Did start 8 games for us this year. 6-3 record with a 3.69 ERA and a 1.6 WAR. Set to make over $4 million in arbitration at this point. Another guy who's on the wrong side of 30. His stuff is now definitely below average. Also a fly ball pitcher who has a bit of difficulty keeping the ball inside the park. He is very popular, so it wouldn't be the best move with the fans to move on from him, but certainly a question. Cole Klecker split the year between Albuquerque and the majors, most of the time in the majors. 3.52 ERA over 76 and 2/3 innings. So he was more than a win above replacement, but Klecker at this point is out of options. Still going to be making the major league minimum, but given that he's out of options, given a profile that certainly does not look exceptional, and given that he doesn't have the greatest personality in the world, Klecker's run with us could possibly be done. Although the fact that he is cheap could work in his favor, given that we've got so many other questions about who we might or might not be bringing back. Bill Douglas, right-hander, picked him up in a trade with the Mets a couple years ago. Had a 6.75 ERA in just 4 innings pitched over 3 games at the major league level. So he wasn't very productive in his introduction to the majors as a 25-year-old. That said, he's a guy who has option years left. He does have a right-handed profile that indicates he can probably be a useful major league reliever. And given that I would say the only guys who definitely are going to be back with us next year right now are Martinez, Shader, Painter, Herrera, and Gibson, I think there's a good chance that Douglas will be back with us and likely end up with a spot in the bullpen coming out of spring training, given that we could have a fair amount of turnover. Jesus Luzardo had been our ace pretty much ever since we picked him up following our second season with the Rockies, our first full season with the team in 2026. He had a really nice run for us in his first 4 years, won double-digit games every season, 17 wins in both 2029 and 2030. This year started the year on the IL, came back, had him start 11 games in the majors where he was very ineffective before we moved him to the bullpen. Ended up 4-6 with an ERA of over 6 on the season. Still was almost a win above replacement level, believe it or not. But he is a guy who, as I noted, did not make the postseason roster this year, and we've got a team option for $12 million for him next year. Luzardo, to me, is kind of in the same bucket as a guy like Kumar Rocker at that type of price tag. Make me think that bringing Braden Nett back to likely compete with Andrew Painter to be our third and fourth starters, Nett is probably a better solution to that than Rocker or Luzardo, although presumably if we decline that option on Luzardo, my assumption is he's going to be a lot less expensive. So right now, tend to think I'll bring back all four of the pitchers who started for us in the postseason: Herrera, Gibson, and Douglas. And then with some of the others, we will give it a little bit more thought, take a look at exactly who's available in the trade market, take a look at who the prospective free agent pitchers are, and then ultimately in the near term start making some decisions as far as the team options and the arbitration eligible players that we may or may not want to bring back. I don't think we'll move on from everyone that is in limbo right now, but I tend to think we'll probably move on from a fair amount of the players that don't necessarily fit our needs with their age, their talent, and the type of money that they're looking for. Turning next to our position players, got a couple of potential backup catchers. Chris Boone, you may remember, came up for us in the postseason and made his major league debut in the postseason when Drew Romo was out for the first two rounds of the playoffs. 1 for 2 with a double in the one game that he did play for us, drove in a run. So he made the most of his introduction to the major leagues. Boone is a guy who still has 2 option years left. Like the glove, don't love the bat, but he is durable and cheap. So he could be in the mix to be our backup next year, depending on what we decide to do with Juan Flores. Flores hit .213 for us in the regular season, but was very capable in the postseason. Hit .267, drove in 6 runs for us in 12 games. Only a 50 WRC plus, and he was still slightly below replacement level when all was said and done, but did come up with some key hits for us and ultimately handled the pitching staff well enough until we turned things over to Drew Romo after Game 1 of the World Series when he was finally healthy. Flores set to make over $4 million next year. So given that I don't think he's got a particularly dynamic bat, and he's identical defensively to Boone, at least at a high level in terms of his ratings, maybe if there's some value for Flores, we trade him away to go with the less expensive option of Chris Boone. One thing we know for sure, Drew Romo will be back as our starting catcher. Hit .299 this year, 21 doubles, 6 triples, a dozen homers, 11 stolen bases, 113 WRC plus, and a 4.3 WAR. Romo finally starting to get a little more expensive. He'll be making $11 million next year, but given his talent, he is definitely worth the money. Moving next to our infielders, when we took this team over, Charlie Condon was one of the prized prospects in the Rockies organization. He's now a major league veteran, going to be turning 29 right at the start of next season. He was our platoon first baseman against left-handed pitching this year, and rough year for Condon. Hit a .195, did have 10 homers and 26 ribbies in 174 at-bats, but ultimately was a replacement level player with a 75 WRC plus. He's kind of been a slightly above replacement level player the last few years, given his lack of ability to hit at the major league level and the fact he's set to make over $3 million next year, and outside of first base, where he did win a Gold Glove for us last year, he's not a particularly interesting defensive player either. Tend to think Mr. Condon has probably played his last game for the Rockies. The other half of our platoon at first base is a guy who had an outstanding first full season in the majors. Talked about the very dramatic splits that Ryan Stone has. Silver slugger type against right-handed pitching. Can't really handle left-handed pitching particularly well at all. He's a guy we drafted in the first round out of UVA just over 3 years ago. And all he did in his first full season in the majors was hit over 300, scored over 100 runs, 37 doubles, 7 triples, 24 homers, drove in 97, added up to a 130 WRC plus and a 3.2 WAR. Particularly if Condon does go away this offseason, he could end up being our first baseman for the foreseeable future. But honestly, think that ultimately he probably could be an outstanding defensive left fielder for us. Marcelo Meyer is arbitration eligible, set to make about $8 million next year. Tend to think he will probably be back, given that there's likely to be some pretty significant turnover with other infielders this year. Coming off of one of his better seasons, 108 WRC plus and a 3.7 WAR, 44 doubles, 5 triples, a dozen homers, stole 15 bases. He is a very good and versatile defensive player. The fragility is always a concern with him, but tend to think that Marcelo Meyer will likely be back as our second baseman next year. Joey Ortiz is a guy who Meyer platooned with this year at second. Ortiz, similar to Kumar Rocker, really brought him on as a rental and a guy to be a utility infielder, part-time platoon guy for us, and he had a solid year, 254 average with 10 homers and 272 at-bats. Was a slightly above average offensive player, put up a 1.7 WAR. The issue with Ortiz, he's looking for over $10 million a year for the next 3 years in his mid-30s. So kind of similar to the discussions we had on the pitching side about Braden Nett versus the likes of Kumar Rocker and Jesus Luzardo. Tend to think that the younger and cheaper Marcelo Meyer is probably the right guy to bring back over a guy like Joey Ortiz. Adael Amador is a guy who's finally set to hit free agency. He was a very highly regarded young player when we took this Rockies team over, and he's had some pretty productive years for us. Coming off of one of the worst years of his career, however, though, just a 82 WRC plus, hit 241 in 452 at-bats, not even a win above replacement level. He, like Meyer, is fragile physically, and he's looking for about $11.5 million a year for the next 3 years. I think it's more likely we'd bring Amador back than Ortiz, but again, Meyer is cheaper for next year, so if we only bring one of those 3 players back, probably going to be Marcelo Meyer. Cole Carrig is another interesting decision, a guy who's very popular locally, ended up spending much of this year in AAA, hit 218 and 78 major league at-bats with us, so he was below replacement level in the small sample size. Carrig set to be making about $5.5 million next year, and as I mentioned, he wasn't on the 26-man roster this year. He is a fan favorite. He has had success with us in the past, and he still will be a much lower price point than Amador or Ortiz or even Marcelo Meyer for that matter. Carrig, not necessarily as talented defensively as some of those guys, but he is a very versatile defensive player. I think he's an interesting decision. He's so popular with the fans locally that I think, given that he's a fan favorite, might be inclined to bring him back. He could definitely compete for time at third base for us, and certainly via utility infielder. And if we decide that we're ultimately going to move on from Condon, Ortiz, and Amador, that could increase the probability of Carrig coming back, just because while we have an abundance of catchers potentially who are major league quality and an abundance of outfielders who are major league quality, along with a few others on the way, right now the organization and the high levels of the organization is a little bereft of young infield talent, which, given those pending departures of Condon, Ortiz, and Amador, may result in Carrig getting another year with us. One guy who will definitely be back with us next year is Ezequiel Tovar. Signed him to that extension last offseason, 5 years at $23.2 million a year after he was coming back from that injury that cost him over a year. Mixed results from Tovar this year. He led the National League with 629 at-bats, so it was good to see him healthy after missing so much time. But offensively, he was not quite the player he's been in the past. The batting average dipped to .261, 32 doubles, 7 triples, and 20 homers to go with 22 stolen bases. Sounds pretty good, but he did strike out almost 180 times. Ended up being a slightly below average offensive player, but still put up a 4 WAR for us. He remains a very good defensive shortstop, 10.7 zone rating, 1 spot 058 defensive efficiency. So think that he can still be a very important member of our infield for several years to come with his outstanding defense and speed. Similar to Drew Romo, he's also got that captain personality and helps keep the clubhouse running well. In Tovar, for those of you who are wondering, ended up pretty similar offensively in the postseason to what he put up in the regular season. Hit .250 in 72 at-bats, but did have 4 home runs and 15 ribbies in the 17 games that he played. So had some clutch hits. You may remember we talked about this at the start of the playoffs. Tovar had actually missed 3 consecutive playoffs for us, 2028, 2029, and 2030. With pretty significant injuries. So nice to have him finally back in the postseason for us. And with those 4 home runs and 15 ribbies, he was definitely a contributor to that World Series title. And we'll turn now to our outfielders, where in contrast to our infielders, we've probably got too many good options to consider bringing back next year. Left fielder Christian Arguelles spent the entire year with the Major League team. Hit .274 in 383 at-bats, 27 doubles, 11 homers, 113 WRC plus, and close to a 2 WAR. Another platoon guy, not as dramatic split differential as we saw with Mr. Stone, but still a guy who looks like a respectable major leaguer against right-handed pitching, and a guy who you would prefer not to be playing against left-handed pitching. Brendan Tunink, like Cole Carrig, kind of got caught up in a numbers game this year. The former Rule 5 pick split the year between AAA Albuquerque and the majors. Hit .256 in 121 at-bats with the major league team. Was above replacement level, 5 for 5 stealing bases. Good defensively, good on the base paths, good personality. The question is ultimately going to be his bat. He is a guy who still has 2 option years left, making the major league minimum, so certainly will be part of the 40-man roster unless someone blows us away with a trade offer that includes Tunink, but questionable whether he'll make the 26-man roster coming out of spring training. Center fielder Dean West ended up hitting .220 in 459 at-bats. Did have 9 home runs, stole 28 bases, but ultimately a pretty ugly 63 WRC plus. Was about a win above replacement level. Really liked the speed, really liked the defensive ability, but he's fragile physically, similar to Tunink. The bat is ultimately the question. Still making the major league minimum, still has option years left, so would expect that similar to Tunink, he'll be competing for a spot on the roster next season. Trent Clausen, former first-round pick out of Oregon State in 2027, doesn't look like he's going to have the same type of ceiling as some of our other young outfielders, but another guy who's got really good speed, pretty solid defensively, and a bat that's usable at the major league level. He's a right-handed hitter who's pretty solid against left-handed pitching and not great against right-handed pitching. Essentially, he platooned this year, even though they played different defensive positions with Arguelles. And Clausen is also a guy who could somehow end up in a platoon role with Ryan Stone down the line. But Clausen, in his at-bats primarily against left-handed pitchers this year, was extremely productive for us. Hit .293 with 8 home runs and 25 ribbies in 164 at-bats, 148 WRC plus and a 1.7 WAR. Don't know that he's going to be someone we make a large long-term commitment to, but is a right-handed hitter to play against left-handed pitching every day and then serve as a bat off of our bench. I think that Clausen certainly has some value for the next few years while he's not making much money. A guy who is making a lot of money is Gus Nieves. He'll be 31 years old early next season, but he has been the straw that stirs the drink offensively in particular for our Colorado Rockies ever since we brought him on board. He's been in the majors for 4 years now at this point, and he's led or tied for the National League lead in home runs and ribbies in 3 of those 4 years. He's now led the league in runs 2 straight years. Arguably the best season of his career this year, .314 average, 119 runs scored, a career high, 188 hits, a career high, 30 doubles, 46 home runs, tied the career high from his rookie of the year / MVP season 3 years ago with 137 ribbies, OPS of close to 1,000 and a 5.3 WAR on the season. So Nieves was definitely outstanding, carried us throughout the regular season. The postseason, he really struggled in the World Series, ended up hitting just .224 for the playoff run, but still was in the middle of things. 8 extra base hits, including 4 home runs in 17 games, and he scored 14 runs for us, was still an above-average offensive player, although he was not dominant in the postseason. Kevin Roberts Jr., the former 5th overall pick of ours from 2026, was the exact opposite of Mr. Nieves. Roberts Jr. in his Major League rookie season hit just .246 in 566 at-bats after he hit close to .350 in a cup of coffee September the year before. Certainly was expecting a higher batting average from Roberts Jr. That said, there were some bright spots. He had 33 doubles, 18 homers, stole 19 bases. Ultimately, though, the 94 WRC plus was slightly below average offensively, put up just a 1.4 WAR on the season. He is a guy that we have signed to a long-term contract, so clearly hoping for more from him offensively going forward. Looking at what our scout thinks of his potential and the fact that he's still only 23 years old, think that hopefully the season he just put up for us is a floor on what he might do. As I mentioned, though, after a not-so-exciting regular season, he was an absolute beast in the postseason. .311 batting average with 6 doubles, 5 home runs in 74 at-bats, scored 15 runs, drove in 10, stole 4 bases for us, ultimately had a 145 WRC plus, and at 23 years old, he was the NLCS MVP, and he also won the World Series MVP award for us. So as I noted, I think there could definitely be some significant turnover on the pitching staff, which could open up some money for us. Feel pretty good about catcher, just a question of who the backup's going to be. Feel really good about our outfielders because we've got a surplus at this point, particularly when you consider that Ryan Stone is really an outfielder by trade, and we've also got some good young outfielders on the way. The infield is where we could have some turnover, and we conceivably could be looking to add a big-time player in free agency and or the trade market. So catcher and outfield, kind of like how we're positioned. The pitching staff in the infield, I think, could be areas where the roster ends up looking a little different by the time we get to the start of the 2032 season. And we're still contemplating exactly what we're going to do in the development lab this off-season, but have 5 guys who are certainly locked in to having a spot in the development lab and probably pretty locked in with what we're going to do. Roberts Jr., the youngster, I think that he's still got a lot of untapped power. We're going to work on that with him. Viewers have convinced me to go with strength and conditioning for Leo Martinez. Tends to be a program that I don't have a ton of luck with, but we do have him signed for the long term. He is only 21 years old, although his injury proneness is still normal. He was banged up very frequently this 2031 season, an elbow strain that cost him the start of the year and almost all of spring training. Couple bouts of back spasms, a viral infection, a rotator cuff strain that cost him some time in the second half of the year, and then back spasms that cropped up again right at the end of the year. So we're going to invest in strength and conditioning. Several members of the Worldwide Scouting Department have suggested that. Would have loved to get him in to work on his control or his movement, where we think he's got a lot of untapped potential. But he is still young, probably going to be a primary focus of our development lab for the next several seasons. And they say that the most important ability is availability, and we'll work on his strength and conditioning specifically this off-season before maybe working on hopefully refining some of his pitching skills in further development lab trips. Justin Gibson, the outstanding young reliever, we think there's a lot of opportunity to improve his control. Derby Mahez, who was our first-round pick a year ago in 2030, the number 50 prospect in baseball. You can see we think he can improve in just about everything. Good speed, a really good glove, great personality. The question as to whether Mahez is going to be a solid, respectable major leaguer or something more than that really comes down to developing his bat at this point. And we're going to work on his gap power, where he's got a lot of untapped potential, and he's also got some speed to leverage. And then Ted Miller, who is a guy that we haven't talked about yet, but a former second-round pick in 2027, who has developed really well for us. Hit 285, 14 homers, 56 ribbies, and 326 at-bats in AAA this year. We're going to work on Miller generating some more bat speed, trying to work on that home run power for him. And he is another guy who could be in the mix as a first base, outfield, DH type for us next season. So I tend to think if there end up being some opportunities to pick up an infielder or a pitcher in the trade market, the surplus of outfielder, first base, DH types that we have at this point would be the preferred currency for us to try to use in the trade market in the coming weeks. And we did our annual review of the top prospects in our organization a couple of episodes ago, right after the regular season finished up, but figured I'd do something a little bit different here because as much success as we have ultimately had with some of our draft picks, it's not all rainbows and unicorns and good decisions. So wanted to just revisit our first couple drafts and some of the misses. Spent a lot of time over the course of the playthrough talking about Jamie Arnold. He is a guy who actually is retired at this point. He was a guy we picked in the first round, pitched with us in 27 and 28, ERA of close to 5 over 30 major league games pitched. We ended up releasing him a while ago. Actually, it was just this past off season, November of 2030. We released him. He signed a minor league contract with the Marlins and got cut. Signed a minor league contract with Boston and got cut. And then he just retired from professional baseball today. So timely to check in on Mr. Arnold. He was a guy who had some personality quirks and definitely never developed the way that we would have hoped. In that first draft, we also went with a pitcher in the second round, Jack Bauer. He is still knocking around our organization. He was the 45th pick overall in 2025, partially torn UCL that he suffered right at the end of the year in AAA this year. He was 3-9 with an ERA of close to 8 for Albuquerque. Looks like a guy who, in a pinch, could still be a usable major leaguer for us, but nothing more than that for Mr. Bauer. And he is going to miss spring training and the start of next season. Can't rule out him getting an opportunity to pitch for us at some point over the next couple of years, but definitely not a big part of our future. Our other second-round pick in that first draft was Zach Strickland. He hasn't even made it as far as Bauer. 8-9 record with a 4.40 ERA for us in Double-A this year. So 3 pitchers with the first 3 picks of our first draft, and definitely feel like did not do much better than strike out with all 3 of those. Rough draft for us overall. Slater DeBrune, outfield prospect, has also made it only up to Double-A, hit 249 in Hartford this year with a 63 WRC plus. Does not look like his bat is going to reach the potential that we thought he had. His speed and his glove were never a question. The bat was going to be the question, and unfortunately it hasn't worked out for DeBrune. Brock Kettleson, a potential two-way player who we picked up in the 4th round, still knocking around. Was not particularly impressive in either Double-A or Triple-A, working out of the bullpen this year. Got more regular playing time as an outfielder. Did hit 263 with 9 homers and 316 at-bats. But you look at his pitching ratings, and he looks like a usable major league arm. You look at his batting ratings, and he looks like a very borderline major league hitter. 24-year-old still maybe helps us in the bullpen in the next few years, but not a great crop in 2025 for us. The last of the picks in the first 5 rounds was Luis Rodriguez, and he actually probably has developed better than anybody. 6-12 record for the Giants in the majors this year, a 5.40 earned run average. Really good at keeping the ball in the park. He's got those extreme ground ball tendencies. He was a guy who was waived by Washington. We used him as currency in a trade back in 2027 when we brought in Caleb Lomavita, who was a backup catcher for us for a couple years, and Julio Rodriguez, a retired reliever. So that was a trade that didn't work out incredibly well for us. Not that we think Rodriguez is going to be an ace, but he certainly looks like he has a very good chance of perhaps having the best career out of the 6 players that we picked in the first 5 rounds in that first draft. And he was the guy who we picked in the 5th round, the last of the 6 selected, and he's also the guy that we traded away. We obviously talked a lot about Kevin Roberts Jr., who we picked 5th overall in 2026. Zane Petty, pitcher that we picked out of Texas Tech, ended up pitching for us parts of 3 seasons in the minors, and he retired torn rotator cuff, a career-ending injury for him in 2028. So Mr. Petty didn't do much. Fourth-round pick, catcher Dylan Moss, still banging around our organization. Really talented defensively. Unfortunately, he's just not really much of a hitter. Did hit 276 in 123 at-bats in Double-A this year, 311 in 148 at-bats in High A ball. But he's now 24 years old, and it's hard to imagine him being more than just someone who might be a call-up to the major league team if we have a couple of injuries at catcher and need a decent defensive player down the line. And Dean West, we talked about him earlier. He was our fifth-round pick in 2026 and has actually become a pretty useful major league player for us, although we've got so much depth in the outfield. Not sure if he's a long-term member of the team or not. Talked about Trent Clausen and Ted Miller, who were our first two picks in 2027, so those guys working out well. Sam Gray, our third-round pick that year, also rapid progression this year, hit over 300 in High A ball, over 300 in Double-A, and then we called him up to Triple-A near the end of the year where he hit 378. Another guy who looks like he could be in the mix for us as a potential outfielder in the not-too-distant future. So three outfielders in a row at the top of the 2027 draft who all seem that they could be useful. Chris Predmore, 25-year-old reliever who recently suffered a career-ending injury, and our fifth-round pick from 2027. Another outfielder, Doug Bartholo, hit 326 in High A ball, and then 259 and 58 at-bats in Double-A. Another guy who looks like he could be a useful major leaguer for us down the line, but probably not an incredibly impactful player at 22 years old. But you look at the 2027 draft, and it's conceivable that 4 of the 5 players are going to be pretty useful for us at the major league level. We're hoping with Kevin Roberts Jr. that we got a superstar out of the 2026 draft, along with guys in the case of Moss or more likely West who could actually contribute at the major league level. And then the picks in 2025 were pretty brutal. So you never know what you're going to get when you've got me running your draft. So as I mentioned, as we get into the offseason in the next couple of episodes, going to have a lot of important decisions to make. Right now, we've only made arbitration offers to Shader and Meyer. I think that Nett and Carrig are likely to get offers from us. Rock, Flores, and Condon, definitely much more uncertain. Thinking about the pending free agents, probably going to be moving on from Joey Ortiz and Kumar Rocker. Adail Amador and Drew Summers, a little bit more questionable, but I think it's very conceivable that we could move on from one or both of them as well. And we've also got those 4 option year decisions we have, which all involve pitchers. Jesus Luzardo, probably the easiest one to decline at $12 million. But as I noted, this is a guy who was a 17-game winner 2 years in a row coming into this season. I don't think there's going to be anyone particularly interested in trading for Luzardo. But if there is and there's some value there, yeah, not shockingly, we could get Mackenzie Gore back on a big contract, making even more money for several seasons with a pitching profile that's even worse, particularly for Colorado. So Luzardo is a guy that we will just be moving on from. There's no value there, not that I really anticipated that there would be. Gregory Santos has been a good, solid pitcher for us. It's hard to imagine that there would be less interest in him at $5 million than there was in Luzardo at $12 million, but there's not more interest either. Is Mackenzie Gore is the only option out there for Mr. Santos. Probably tells us that it's the right decision to move on from him as well. Might as well check the other guys. Now's your time to think of how these guys might look. Bobby Miller compared to Luzardo and Santos, is he's going to be more or less popular? Equally popular as well. Mackenzie Gore on that horrible contract is the only option out there. Test Luke Little for $6 million as well. Definitely has a better skill set at this point than any of the others. I do think that that ability to keep the ball in the park, the extreme ground ball tendencies, throwing in the high 90s as a left-hander is a very interesting skill set, and obviously he was very successful for us a year ago, somewhat less successful this year. If any of these guys are going to have more value, I would think it would be Luke Little, but it won't shock me if it's the same. There is a little bit more value here. It's in all cases except for Grant Richardson bringing back a long, and in the cases of Bubic, May, and McKenzie, more expensive contract back. Christian Scott's contract is a little bit less in terms of money, but he's also not nearly as good of a pitcher. So tend to think there's not going to be a ton of really interesting options for us to trade away some of those guys who have the team options for this upcoming season, but wanted to just kind of show the worldwide scouting department the talent pool that was out there. We could reunite with Dustin May, who had a couple nice years for us a while back, but he's fragile at this point, 34 years old, and making a lot of money. Another guy that I think I'd rather bring Braden Nett back for about half the money at a much younger age than bring Dustin May on board. So not a ton of opportunities to extract value from the guys who have those team options. Tend to think we'll be moving on from most or all of them in very short order. And last but not least, we'll take a look at some of the prospective free agents coming up this offseason. As far as position players, hard to imagine that the Yankees are going to let a lifetime Yankee with over 600 home runs leave, but Aaron Judge, closing in on his 40th birthday, is a potential free agent this offseason. Nick Kurtz of the Las Vegas A's, another first baseman who is a big-time offensive player who could potentially be eligible. C.J. Abrams as well. Jordan Lawler, more of a profile that could work for us, particularly if we do end up moving on from both Amador and Ortiz. Lawler might be someone to engage with. Gabriel Arias, the shortstop, if he wasn't dealing with that torn ACL, could be an interesting option as well. Adail Amador and Joey Ortiz also among the more interesting middle infield prospects. Jordan Westberg, not great defensively, better bat than Cole Carrig, but I think Carrig definitely has better versatility defensively and is a similar skill level defensively and also popular with our fans. So not an incredibly fruitful class as far as the position players who might be out there. Pitching-wise, as you would expect, there's some big-time relievers with Justin Martinez, who was on the trade block, potentially hitting free agency. Noah Schultz could be the real interesting one. The 28-year-old looks like an absolute monster. Won 18 games for the White Sox this year, led the American League in wins, ERA, WHIP, walks per 9, strikeout to walk ratio, FIP minus, and WAR. He's already a 3-time All-Star with a Cy Young Award under his belt, and you would think with the season he just put together, he's got potential for another Cy Young Award. Fan favorite, extremely popular. like the high loyalty and the high work ethic. Don't love the low leadership and adaptability, but a very impressive four-pitch arsenal. Excellent stuff, excellent movement, really good control, extreme ground ball tendencies. The left-hander probably is going to get paid a ton of money, but he could be a very interesting option to consider. Several other pretty solid starting pitchers out there too. Zach Gallen, Logan Gilbert, Logan Webb, Taj Bradley, Jacob deGrom at 43, still looking for another job. Imanaga at 38, elbow ligament reconstruction surgery. Bailey Ober, Trevor Rogers, and Justin Steele coming off of a ruptured disc in his back. Some of the other starting pitchers who could be less costly options than Schultz in particular. But some interesting potential pitching talent out there. Definitely some guys who could serve as more than capable fourth or fifth starters for us. Really probably some guys who could be pretty solid threes as well. So it's just going to be a matter of how much money some of those second-tier older starting pitchers are looking for, and then how much more money it would take to bring a guy like Schultz. Hard to imagine that the White Sox will let him test free agency, but stranger things have happened. And with that, we will call it an episode. Next time around, we'll continue talking through our thought process on some of these decisions that we've got to make. We also will visit and check in on some of the players that we've missed out in the IAFA period in the draft in recent years. Always like to check in on some of the players that were recommended by the Worldwide Scouting Department that we didn't get the opportunity to pick or ended up going in a different direction on. So we'll check in on those kind of players next time around, and also maybe have a trade or two to report. I'm going to spend some time perusing the options in the trade market, particularly with some of those arbitration eligible players that we may want to move on from, and even some of the young outfielders where we got a surplus. Would love to find a way to bring on an infielder or perhaps a big-time starter or reliever in trade. So who knows? Maybe I'll have a surprise on one of those fronts by the time the next episode begins. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.